welcome, bonsoir et bienvenue dans ma vie citoyenne Europe. Ce soir, je suis en compagnie de Lydia Gratis et nous allons parler de l'impact que le racisme et la discrimination a sur notre santé mentale. Ce soir, cet entretien s'effectuera entièrement en anglais et en langue des signes. Merci à Romy et à Natacha. À nos francophones, vous pouvez activer les sous-titres si besoin et n'hésitez pas à poser vos questions et mettre vos commentaires en français or in English. Same goes for our English-speaking and non-speaking viewers. This is your show. Your question and comments are welcome. Lydia Gratis, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. For those who do not know Lydia, she is a very active and engaged youth. Let me just briefly tell you about our guest. She's an anti-racism educator and activist, Black wellness content creator, founder of Ubuntu European Deaf Youth, a focus group under European Union for deaf youth, catering to Black youth and youth of color around Europe. So, Lydia, did I miss something? Would you like to say a bit more 4 words about yourself in a couple of, and what drives you?
Thank you. You summed me up perfectly. That's everything. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. So, can you tell us a little bit what drives you? I mean, you are such a busy person. Like, I thought I was busy, but you are way busier than me.
What drives me? I think my inner child. When I think back to like my experiences growing up, I want to make sure that kids like me and the next generation don't go through what I had to go through, that they have the representation that they need, they have the platforms that they need, they have the knowledge and the information that they need. So that's pretty much why I wear so many hats within Ireland and on a European level, just trying to make sure that the next generation has what they need and I'm able to provide that in whatever small way that I can.
Well, this is really well commendable to you. And I know that during BLM, a lot of you, it seems like you've even went up a notch in terms of your engagement. Can you tell us how BLM, Black Lives Matter, shaped your anti-racism activism?
Black Lives Matter for me, I think, highlighted the importance of Pan-African unity. You know, we spend so much time, when we hear Black Lives Matter, we think of America, we think of overseas and what's happening. And one thing that I'm always trying to remind people here in Europe is that Europeans are the grandfather of what's happening in America. Like, white Americans are European people. There's no white Americans, they are European American. And people often forget that. So they're like, oh, there's problems in America, it's worse in America, it's bad in America. I'm like, it's worse in your own backyard. Just a few months ago, a Black man was killed by the police here in Ireland. He had mental health issues and the media went wild. They called him everything from a thug to the favorite N-word. Everything that they could possibly do and say was done. But at the same time, people were like, oh, it's in your mind. This isn't America. America is where it's bad. I think we need to equip the youth that grow up in Europe with knowledge of their experiences. There's so many young people who grow up here and they're like, oh, I don't identify as Black. I understand the intersection of all my identities, but I just don't feel comfortable calling myself Black. And that alone is seeped in the fact that they're either the only ones in their community or they've never had interactions with people within their community to help them understand who they are and where they're going and where they're coming from. If you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you're going, you know? So my passion and just my work is just delivering that information to youth, Black youth, Asian youth, ethnic minority youth in general who are deaf, who don't have access to mainstream information that you would genuinely need to hear. I want us to actually have those conversations that they can go back home and be like, I'm Black, or I'm Asian, I'm proud, I'm happy with who I am, because that information has been put there for them. So Black Lives Matter has literally pushed me out of like working within an environment where I'm comfortable, which is like the hearing world, into the deaf community, full-fledged, trying to make sure that we're all within the conversation, we're all involved in the conversation with that. It's been a huge move, and it's horrible that it takes a movement where we're literally trying to say our lives matter when it's more than that, for people to finally be like, oh, let's pay attention. I see a lot of people being like, when the Black Lives Matter protests and everything happened and it blew up, that was the time where things started changing. I'm like, we've been talking about this for decades. Just because you woke up now doesn't mean it started now. You know?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I mean, what you're saying is so important. Feeling well in your own skin. And I think that's really difficult for minority people, for racialized people. Welcome, Mira, who says to you, thank you for hosting this conversation. This is so, so important. And I also want to thank you, Lydia, because thanks to you, because like, as I said, not being part of a deaf community, sometimes not because I want to, I forget. And thanks to you, having you in my show is teaching me so much more. And so from now on, I'm going to try to, as much as possible, provide this show and also provide everything of the activities that I usually do to empower young people and racialized community, to also extend that to do more for deaf people. So thank you for that.
I think it takes one interaction and one connection at a time that creates a whole domino effect. There's going to be people watching this that are going to be like, oh, we need to provide access too. So I love the fact that you've given me a chance to just come in here and chat with you and talk about, you know, the struggle, the resilience, and the love. It's great.
Well, you're teaching me a lot. So I said that you just created Ubuntu European Deaf Youth. So what can you tell us about this organization? Why did you create it? And what sort of support services are you offering them?
So back in 2017, I became the chairperson of the Irish National Association for the Deaf. And that's how my relationship with EUDY kind of flourished, because I was responsible for managing the organization, managing my team, going abroad with kids in Ireland who were going to EUDY camps and so on. So I got to know the board within EUDY and the staff and build a relationship. Around June last year, 2020, they reached out to me and they were doing the web series. This time they wanted to talk about Black Lives Matter. So they were like, oh, can we get in contact with you? We'd love you to be one of our panelists. We have 2 more people. We just want to learn, and we're educating ourselves, but we also know the importance of passing on the platform to people of color. I was like, oh, no problem. We had that panel. It was nerve-wracking because it was the first time where I was put in a position where I'm talking to deaf people that know me, and a community that knows me, and I'm not on the other side with the hearing people trying to advocate for inclusion within disability and race. But I think it went well. It sparked a lot of conversation. So a few days after that, I was like, it's always been a huge dream of mine to set up something for deaf youth, Black youth in general, all over Europe, or even back home in the motherland. But maybe this would be somewhere where we can start. So I reached out to one of the staff on EUDY, and I was like, I'd love to do something for BIPOC deaf youth around Europe. Is that something you'd be open to working with me on? And they're like, oh, we were discussing this in our meeting yesterday. You're the perfect person. We'd love that. Let's do it. And we just started working, applying for study sessions within the Council of Europe Youth Department, getting all that rolling. And the study session got approved. April this year, I got to pick my team, working with Ramel Welcher. He's from Haiti. He lives in Sweden. Amrit Nangla from the UK. Nadeem Islam from Bangladesh, but he lives in the UK. And Katya Fahoud from Kenya, and she lives in Switzerland. And it's just been amazing working with them. Together, we've also got a work plan approved. We found out yesterday that our 2022 work plan got approved and the funding came through. I know, I'm so excited. And like, it changes so much because I keep envisioning my younger self. And I'm like, if she saw me, she would have thought I was so cool because I'm finding people like me to make things happen that impact the next generation in ways that I needed when I was younger. So that's been like amazing. EUDY have been amazing with information, resources, connections. Everything we're doing is under them, and they've just been amazing. So at the moment,
So this is very interesting because I'm gonna challenge you a little bit because you just created an entire organization just for racialized people. You are, how is this there's no issue within the Irish Deaf Society? Because, for example, in France, recently there's been a legislation coming out against Muslim people, but more generally against the idea of having people within the same community gathering together and excluding others. So what do you think of that? And it seems like in Ireland, it is not becoming an issue. And so, yeah, what do you think of that?
that brings me back to last year again. I started teaching anti-racism and Black history workshops within the community to professors, deaf professors, academics, teachers, people, just generally people within the community. And when my workshop started, I had several people say to others around me that the information came back to me. Why is she teaching a Black history and anti-racism workshop? Why can't we have the opposite of that? We need to have balance. I'm like, the world is the opposite of that. The opposite of an anti-racism workshop is a racism workshop. The world is a racism workshop. That triggers me so much. I think on a European level, when I get comments like that, I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. But when it's here at home, it's people who know you. The little girl in me starts shaking, and I'm like, is this how you people have thought this whole time that you watched me grow up, and this is what you believed, and this is how you thought, and this is the safe space that I thought I was in? So it's not all roses and daisies. It's just, I think my work and the work that I do is more accepted on an international level. It's more accepted when I'm talking to deaf Americans, Black deaf Americans. It's more accepted when I'm talking to deaf people in Europe in general who have organizations that want to work with me. While at home, it's baby steps. I still feel like I'm the token. I'm involved in these organizations because they want to show that they have a Black person there. And because I came to Ireland at the age of 6, and for the first 10 years, I was the only Black person in the entire Irish deaf community. So I became the spokesperson for Black people from a very young age, which really irritated me. And now there's a few more, maybe 7, 8 more people, but they're not heavily involved in the community. So people still look at me as the representative. And all the uncomfortable conversations and the comfortable conversations come to me. So I feel like here I'm still finding my feet and trying to prove that I belong, even though I've been in this country for 20 plus years. While on a European level, I don't know how it's happening, but I'm aligning with people who understand my vision, understand my team's vision. People who are educating themselves are not expecting me to educate them. I think that's the difference for me. Working on a European level, it charges me because doors are opening for changes to be made. While here, I'm not sure if it's a thing of familiarity. But in Ireland, I feel like there's so many obstacles and people see what they want to see. They don't see what's in front of them. The advocacy work that we do, there's always excuses. As in, I remember we had the Black Lives Matter march here last year, and I was facilitating interpreters to make it more accessible. And several people came, and the excuses for coming was, oh, I live nearby, so I thought I'd just join. And I'm there, standing there, we're protesting and we're marching and we're crying, and I'm seeing people I grew up with on their phone, taking pictures, posing, and I'm just like, reality hits you in those moments where you're.
And how does this affect your mental wellness? Like because you said you've been, and for me, I found it very sad for you to say, I've been in Ireland for 6 years. I grew up there, and not only within the deaf community, I've always been the only one. I know how it feels, but I think it's even worse when you have this when you're deaf and you're black and you're a woman and then you're young. I mean, all those different intersectionality that you're facing, and so for me it's really heartbreaking that after over 20 years, I would say, you still don't feel like you belong, and that you have to put a front, and that you have to be something, and you have to be somewhere, and you have to still be an alert, like careful around people, because you never know what can happen to you. So how is this sort of sphere has been affecting your mental health and your wellness?
I used to always be told when I was younger that the body keeps the score, and I never really understood what that meant until I got older. I remember being young, and anytime I was within the Black community, I was hiding my deafness, and anytime I was within the deaf community, I was dimming down my Blackness. So as a child, you're in this constant state of survival. I can't show my disability within the Black community because I don't want sympathy, I don't want pity, I don't want to be talked to or treated as in I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know what I'm saying. I remember being a kid and we'll all be playing and stuff like that. And then as soon as somebody sees my hearing aid, it becomes a thing of like a switch goes off where the kids can be mean. A switch goes off and they go from talking to me normal to she can't hear, like the whispers. And I'm like, I can literally hear exactly what you said about me. So from very early on within the Black community, it was like speech therapy, hide my deafness, make sure that I can fit in so well that nobody questions it. Because people I was friends with for like 10 years who only found out that I couldn't hear last year when an article came out in the Irish Times talking about my activism and me as a whole. And I'm getting phone calls like, what? I'm like, yeah, trauma. It's the same thing within the deaf community where I was trying so hard not to be too Black for the white people within the community. And you just get to a point where you're just like exhausted. It weighs on your shoulders so much because not only are you in a place of constant survival, but you're also on fight or flight mode. Meaning you're not putting yourself in positions to reach your best potential. You're not taking up opportunities. You're not shining. You're not speaking your truth at all, you know? And then I got to my mid-20s and it became a thing of like, people are going to say what they want to say. People are going to say what they want to say. You're either going to be true to yourself or you're not. And I went home in 2019 for the first time since I came here when I was in 99. I went home and it was for a month for my sister's wedding. And as soon as I got off the flight, I'm walking, this is so bad, but I'm walking through the airport and there's no anxiety about the immigration checking my passport. I don't feel that because it's a Black man at immigration. I'm walking, I can see all the white people shaking and I'm walking there like, I'm home. I remember like it was a moment that I had with myself where I'm just standing there. I've traveled so much within Europe because of youth work, and I always have anxiety, like what's going to happen, what are they going to do. I remember I lived in Spain for a few months. When I left there, instead of coming back home, I went to the UK to visit my mom. And I was really sick. I got off the flight and immediately they're like, oh, you're lying. Your Irish passport is not real. You're not Irish. You're trying to sneak into the UK. And then they put me in a holding cell, take my phone, check all my baggage for 24 hours. So my mom doesn't know why I'm not home. And then they put me on a flight, no interpreters, nothing. I have no idea what's going on, back to Spain, just because they didn't believe that I was from Ireland and I was trying to sneak into the UK. My whole family live in the UK. I don't want to live there. Like, it was so traumatizing. And then to get back to Spain 2 days later and my phone's blowing up. My friends, my mom, everybody's asking, My mom's writing letters to politicians to complain after she finds out what's happened, and they don't reply.
Okay, so are you telling me that you were going back home to Ireland and the authority literally took...
I went to England to visit my mom. So I got to Stansted Airport, and I was detained at Stansted because they didn't believe that my Irish passport was an Irish passport.
And did they give you interpreter? They just made the decision without providing you any...
They just came in and offered
any
me
sort of support
and asked me if I needed painkillers because I was sick, and then they just left me there for a few hours, and then they took me and they put me on a plane, and they gave the pilot my passport, they gave the pilot all my documents, and I was escorted off the plane in Spain by police officers while all the white people were just looking at me like I've done something wrong. And as soon as I got to Spain, the immigration officer opens my passport and he goes, "Why are you back?" And he hands it back to me. "You can leave, you don't need to be here." And I have to go back to my apartment where I was staying with my friends and book another flight. And this time I was like, I'm not going to London, I'm going straight home. So 2 weeks later, I was on the next flight back to Dublin, and my mom just came to Dublin to see me.
Wow. Well, we've got a couple of Irish people, and Iva is saying, "Oh my God, what an awful incident! Being shot in cell because the border police wouldn't accept you were Irish." and then Mira is saying, "Oh gosh, so sorry." And then pilot your passport, and then WTF. Yes,
talking to people when they hear
this is the sort of things that people don't hear. Those things like politicians don't hear those things. This is everyday citizens. When you raise the issue of racism, of institutional racism, they don't believe you because they don't hear those things, because they don't see those being in the media or in the tabloid. They don't see that. All they see is police brutality on the reverse, like every time there is, which is still wrong to, hit the police and everything, but then they show there's a disproportion of showing the public how much there's a brutality against the police, because that stresses people and that creates this level of fears,
not
of that the world is going,
not even just that, but
upside down.
The other day that says what police brutality is to Black men is what medical racism is to Black women. Because I have so many stories. That's not even the worst of it. I remember in 2019, the day after Christmas, I ended up in A&E because I hadn't been feeling well for like months. But I told myself I was fine. It's not that bad. So I got to A&E and I spent like 10 hours sitting there waiting to be seen. Every white woman that came before and after me was seen, no problem. I got to a point where the pain got so bad and I had a fever. And I was like, I know I've been in pain and I've not been myself for months, but something's not okay here. So I go to triage, I knock on the door, and the nurse goes, "We'll see you, you're on the list." I'm like, "Yeah, but you've seen everybody before me and after me." And they're like, "Oh no, we'll see you." So I'm like, okay. I go back and I sit down. I guess even worse a few hours later. So I'm knocking on the door of triage, crying, and I'm like, I'm in so much pain. So this time it's an Asian male nurse, and he's like, "Sit down, I'll assess you." So I turn to the left and I look on the computer, and there's my name, and it says just a cough. So I stopped panicking. I'm like, "You haven't assessed me. How do you know it's just a cough? You haven't even spoken to me in the 12, 13 hours I've been here." And he finally hits him that it's serious. So they take me to another room, do a bunch of tests. 6 hours later, they're like, "We're putting you in an isolated hospital room. You have chronic anemia and you need a blood transfusion. You have influenza B and you have uterine fibroids. And that's why you haven't been yourself over the last few months, and your hormonal imbalance is literally messed up." So I'm sitting there getting a blood transfusion. I'm like, so it took me having a panic attack, crying, and knocking on the door for 12 hours for you to finally be like, "Oh, she's not okay." And you're putting me in an isolated hospital room on my own for 3 weeks. I came out of a hospital after those 3 weeks, and I was just like, I'm going to do what I need to do to make sure that people in my community are conscious and people within my community are doing what they need to do to make things better. Because we experience these things and then we go home and we're exhausted because it's not the first experience. What's the point? It's not going to change anything. Even after that, I remember coming out of hospital, my iron was back up, no longer anemic, influenza, flu was gone, and I still had fibroids. And they told me it was a 1-year waiting list for surgery. I'm like, okay, no problem. I go for my first appointment 6 months later with the gynae, and I remember sitting there because I was too scared to research and get information for myself. So I'm tearing up and I'm asking him questions about my body, whether I'll be able to have kids, how the medication they've given me has made me worse. And he laughs and he goes, I've been doing this for 12 years. It's not that bad. You're fine. I'm looking at him and I'm like, you're a white man. What do you mean it's not that bad? It's fine. You operating on women does not make you knowledgeable of the pain that we're experiencing. I don't understand.
So Black, yeah, I've heard a lot of those sort of things happening, that Black women, the pain of Black women is being dismissed. The voices of Black women, they're not being listened to within the medical sphere. And the fact that you had to wait, I mean, I'm just trying to count in my head. I'm not very good at counting, but I think about 20 hours to be able, to figure out what you had, and to try to make you feel better. Like we always say, when you go to the emergency room, it's serious. So people should take you seriously, but it's really awful. So what did you do? Like, because you were saying, like, usually when this happens within the community, then people go home and then they just, brush it off. And as you said, it added to the other trauma that they live every day. So what did you do in this case? What happened? I'm lucky enough because my mom works in a hospital. So, so did you decide to ask to see the medical board to make a complaint?
The important thing was going back to heritage and family, having conversations with my mom and my grandma, and also reading up on, they say Black women are the ones that are most likely to get fibroids. There's a reason for that, right? So I decided to connect with friends in the Caribbean and Africa and so on, and just find out, like, what are women back home doing? What's the process? What's happening? And I remember October last year, around the time of my birthday, I was like, I know I haven't been myself for a year and a half, but these medicines have just made me worse. The doctors are not listening to me. I'm not scared anymore. I'm going to do the research. It was no longer open up, type in fibroid, start crying. At this point, it was herbs, supplements, self-care, holistic care, Black people, what we used to do in history, our heritage, our ancestry. I went down a whole tunnel of beautiful information. And within 3-4 months, my closest friends and family were coming to me like, wow, you're glowing. Wow, you're smiling more. You haven't called us crying in weeks. You're more yourself. You're getting more done. You're more motivated. How? I'm like, ancestry, heritage, holistic. We have the tools. Systems that were not built for us will not protect us. And just because we carry things well doesn't mean they aren't heavy. People always expect us to gracefully go through things and be like, you have a high pain tolerance, you'll be fine. Black women have been through worse. That doesn't mean you have to put us through more. The worst is not the worst if you're going to keep putting us through more. Telling us that things have ended, they haven't ended. I mean, I know of a really big YouTuber here in Ireland. She's of Nigerian ancestry. She is Nigerian, sorry. And her husband's from Germany. She talks about how she spent 9-10 years studying to be a doctor, and she moved from Germany to Ireland. And within the first few years of her being a doctor in Ireland, all the patients were like, I want a real doctor. What are you doing here? I don't want to see you. How do you go from 10 years of studying to be a doctor to, I think I'm just going to go do social media full time and work on my NGO organizations and create a medical institution back home in Nigeria, all this kind of stuff, instead of actually going into hospital and do what I was trying to do, what I spent my life doing. It's too much. She's the same woman who talks about how she calls during her first pregnancy trying to buy a house for her husband. He was in South Africa doing his work, and none of the landlords would let her even view the houses or even give her the houses. They kept saying they were gone. So when her husband came back, she was like, I need to pick my battles wisely. We're either going to have a house or I'm going to fight these people. And I'm pregnant, so I can't fight these people. So here's the list. You go view these houses again. The very house that she wanted, her husband was able to get it because he's a white man.
Wow. Well, Mira is saying in regards to your your sharing about like how you went over and going back into the ancestry. She said that's exactly right. We have the technology as POC, and this system wasn't made for us, so it will not work for us. So what do we do then? The system is not made for us. Okay, we all agree to that. Okay, we also agree it definitely doesn't work for us. So what do? We just let it be and just create our own system then in parallel within the European Union, or
people are not obligated to like us, racist, as much as we want them not to be racist. May live their whole life. Some of them are probably 50. They don't have another 50 years for us to change them, right? So we keep banging on doors, let us in, let us in, let us in. Imagine all that energy went towards working collectively together, like dismantling all the systems that the psychological beliefs that they put into us, where we're fighting each other, the colorism within the community, all those kind of things. Dismantle that. Let's unite and work together. And it's not, what I'm saying is not a thing of overthrow white people, because I know people are going to hear what I'm saying and assume that's not
careful.
What I'm trying to say is collectively we go far, alone you go fast. So I may be banging on EUDY's door and they let me in, but just letting me in is not going to change anything. I'm trying to pull a whole bunch of people in with me, right? So even when it comes to medical system, we have doctors. The best doctors in the world are Asian and African heritage. Like they all are moving all over the world and doing their work all over the world. Come back home, build systems back home. Let all of us in the diaspora all return back where we came from, do something there, or stay in Europe, but build something for us, by us, within Europe. And when somebody's looking for it, I have to Google Black gynecologists, and I can't find any in Europe. Does that mean taking a flight back home? They're there, but why am I not finding you? Create platforms for us to know you exist. Make your presence known in the most groundbreaking way that you can. Instead of asking for create your own tables, because the thing is, when you're doing what you need to do, people will respect you. They may not like you, but they will respect you. So maybe by creating those tables of your own, then it's like, oh, you're doing that. You have your own table. Now you can come to our table because you no longer need us. We want you now.
Yes. Yes, I agree with you in the whole creating your own table, definitely. It's just that people think that the racists are the problem, are those that we need to worry about. But no, it's the fake progressive. It's those who seems like they are progressive, but then if you want to change, because like even if you say, okay, let's not change the system, let's just create our own system. As I shared with you earlier a little bit of an example of what's happening in France about creating our own table and speaking with each other, Black people or Muslim people just speaking with each other. In France, they call it communautarism, and it's like death. It's like you're doing something wrong to the nation by doing such a thing, instead of understanding that people that look the same, that have been through the same, also need together to speak together and to be able to find solution together for those. But I hope somebody is listening to you, because I do want that Black annuaire. I don't know how we say annuaire in French. Listing. is it I think it's like a, you know, like a the phone book, you know, like just for Black people. So then we have that list, you know, because like, what do you, so how do you, you know, you talked about your wellness, you talked about your trauma, you talked about how it stays and then later on it manifests through health, through your health. So have you been to a therapy to do therapy? Because I know the Black community and therapy,
I
it's
love it.
not.
I would listen. But like, I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I would be signed up like right there and then. My mom is a counselor, um, so I understand the importance of it. But the thing is, I want a therapist that understands my experiences. I remember my first time ever in therapy. I was 12. I'd been the youngest for, I was 10, sorry. I'd been the youngest for 10 years. So my mom thought all of a sudden I was acting up because my sister was born. I begged to differ, but she said so. So I was in therapy, and I remember like being in therapy, and even at the age of 10, I'm like, I can't tell her that my mom hit me because in the Black community it's not abuse, but white people will think my mom abused me. I can't tell her this, I can't tell her that. And I remember sitting there, and she gave me a map, and she goes to me. At that day, I was really upset with my mom. She gave me a map, and she goes to me, inside the globe and on Earth, put the names of all the people you want in your world, and all the people you don't want in your world, put them outside. So I put my mom's name on the outside. 2 days later, social services were boom, boom, boom at the door. And my mom called, and my sister answered. My cousin answered. And me and my cousin are the same age. So she answers, and she's like, listen to my mom. And she talks to my mom. And she gets off the phone, and she looks at me, and she goes, your mom says that if we answer this door, social services is going to take us. So we have to choose what we're going to do. At that point, my mom came home. I hugged her so hard, and I said, I'm never going back to therapy again, ever. I'm not going to therapy. What
Wow.
did I say to this woman for her to be like, social services? All I said was I was upset with my
Yeah.
mom. I didn't tell her anything deep. So what happens now? We go and we tell them the actual cultural differences that we have, like really explain these things to a white girl, but she's not going to get me. So I grew up with that in my head for the longest time. My mom's a therapist. I have all the tools. I know I'm smart. I'm self-aware. Blah 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 blah. And then I think when I found out I had fibroids, I said, yeah, the trauma has caught up with me. I need to do something about this. And that's when my hunt for a therapist here in Ireland started. But there's no, in the last few months, we found 4 or 5 Black therapists in the country, but they're fully booked. Therapists outside the country, they're not available. Therapists that understand the deaf experience and the Black experience, even less. I mean, finding an interpreter for one of my events where the organizers only wanted a Black woman specifically to sang for me was hard. It took me 6 months to find Natasha, and that I had the biggest smile on my face. People thought I was crazy. I was like, I've never worked with a Black interpreter before. I'm so happy. It was like life changing for me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Black dentist, the same thing last year. I walked in and this Black woman sitting there, and she's a dentist, and she asked me, what have you eaten? I was able to list all African food. I had no shame. I had no shame. I was like, my inner child is loving this. You know, so it's the same with therapists.
I know.
If you had them, I'd be at that chair straight away.
But we definitely need this book, you know, this phone book list, you know, of Black people expertise, because this is also the sort of things that I always say, because I get asked often, oh, Celine, like, you know, I guess, like, I get always told, Celine, like, it's not like we don't want Black people or racialized people in our panel at the European level. It's just, we don't know any. We don't know where they are. And I always say, just tell me what you're looking for, and I will find you. Because one thing that the community is really good at is every time I ask for something, they will find it. They will be like, I know somebody. Oh, I know this person, and oh, I can do it. And I think, as you said, I feel like the community, the like the new generation even more is becoming more and more self-aware of each other, is becoming more and more about understanding solidarity and having the same, mind that you have, being like, okay, let's not fight each other. Let's just bring our forces together. Let's bring our expertise together and build each other up instead of trying to tear us down. Because when we tear us down, they don't need to tear us down. We're doing it for them. And so we still stick in the same, over and over pattern, 10 years down the road, oh, we're still talking about inter-racism and about the same thing and the same problem about access to employment, access to health, access to housing. So what have we done for 10 years?
Not even just, but so just to add to something that you said, where you were like, people often say that, oh, I'd love to have Black people on our panel, or I'd love to have Asian people, or other people of color on our panel, but we just don't have them. That's a reflection of your dinner table. We live in a cosmopolitan world. The people that you invite into your home are reflective of the people that you're giving opportunities to. So if you don't have any Black people in your home, don't come and tell me that you can't find a Black person to add to your panel, because if you had a Black friend, she would have somebody for you to put on your panel. You are not making the effort on a personal level to, like, if you ask any Black person about white people's lives and their experiences, we can answer like this. We're consciously trying to learn other cultures. We're consciously trying to involve ourselves in other people's lives, integrate ourselves across communities and cultures. And white people step back and they're like, oh, I just don't have. Oh, there's just nobody. If you wanted to, you would. Where there's a will, there's a way. You are not going out and inviting people to dinner. You are not meeting people to conversate about their experiences. We're not the token that you add to your panels. We're the friends that you make. We're the person that the woman that your child is friends, your child's friends' parents, the Black ones, yes, go talk to them. The people in your workplace who are doing the same work as you, who have different work experiences than you, within your department, outside your department, conversate with people, build relationships with people. Networking is not just networking within your field. Networking is networking in the world, cross cultures and communities. Like, there's no way you can come and tell me I can't find somebody for my panel. I'm going to ask you to tell me how diverse your life is. Because that's the thing that irritates me, especially when we have social media and people are like, oh, I couldn't find them. If I wanted to find, like, I found the that I have today on Twitter. If you go on Twitter and you type what you want, or you go on Instagram and people are putting themselves out there, find them. You're going to find someone who can discuss racism, because there's numerous Black women that I have found. You will probably find white women too doing things that are not their place to be doing. And but look, you're not looking. If you're not looking, you're not going to find. There's no way in this digital age.
You know what?
I looked.
Remember when you said like pick your battles? So that one, I'm like, you know what? You can't find it. That's okay. Like, I'll find it for you. Like, this is the, like, because I feel like if I start like telling them off, then I'm closing the door. So I'm like, you know what? It's okay. I'll do it for you. And it actually works, because over time they keep asking. So I'm like, great. And then they keep retaining. It's same for interpretation and translation. Within the organization I work with, I have I have been, let's say, a little bit making sure that for all interpretation that my organization needs in terms of languages, then we have Black people doing it. And recently I was talking to the European Commission about it. And the person was like, oh, yes, please, if you have a list of interpreter of color, please send it to me, because I'm the one who decides also on my side, so I can push for it. So this is how you kind of try to push for us to get into those places, and later on to just like dominate. But I have a couple of comments that I want to read out. First, there's a shout out for you, Romeo from Cat. And then there's, oh no, I think there's somebody who was bringing someone else. So, and Romel said, important conversation. And there's so many people in deaf communities that will be benefiting of such. And then Zakaria say, hey there. Hey, I'm deaf from South Africa. Nice to meet you. And then Amri said epicness. And then we have Mira who says the master's tool will never dismantle the master's house from Audrey Lord.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then she also go on and to say, yes, that is crucial relationship building. So, okay. So now, okay, you need to give me your therapist, because I also think we all need therapy. Like I have my own trauma because I, always being, at that table, but alone at that table, that is a lot. That is a lot to have to deal with, because sometimes I just want to sit at the table and observe, and just chill, not say anything. But because you're always there alone, you feel like you have the obligation to stand up, to rise up to the issue, because if you don't, then that's an opportunity that is missed, and time fly so quickly. So yeah, I definitely need therapy. And also, everybody has our African family and the way we've been raised sometimes leave a couple of things. So yeah. Yes,
that's another conversation.
That's another conversation. But I would like to get back into the EU and ask you, so the EU and now the Council of Europe have both published a resolution regarding anti-racism and Afrophobia. So for me, it's a good thing. So they're starting to recognize it. So we're moving forward. And then recently, the EU has nominated its first ever anti-racism coordinator to help implement its action plan against racism. Can you tell us what it is to be Black, woman, young, and deaf? And how do you navigate all your intersectionality? Because I feel like those action plans, they think about the intersectionality, but they don't really apply it. You have so many action plans about gender. You have action plan about environment. You have action plan about digitalization. But it seems like they never really bring into it the intersectionality, so it always misses and also leave people behind.
Intersectionality, it's my new favorite word. I love it. Yeah, I think the older I get, the more comfortable I am and the more my intersecting identities merge, right? Growing up for me, it was, I'm this person in this community, I'm this person in this community, and I'm this person in this community, and never do they merge. Nobody must know. When you're in the white deaf community, you're not, just don't act black. Take those hoops off, be as close to, your hair must be straightened, and it's crazy. And then when you get into the Black community, it's like you need to be as able-bodied, as sufficient, and as capable as possible. Don't let them see a weakness or a flaw in you, otherwise it's pity and sympathy, and everybody has to pray for you, and every pastor in the world will know your name. And then when you move on to being a woman, and it's a lot. But I think when I began to understand that I'm Lydia before I'm anything else, and I am my own before I'm anybody else's, everything else began to work in alignment with my journey, my purpose, and my plan. So in terms of what the EU is doing, I think that's just a start. We're seeing a lot of companies, organizations, associations, and so on within Europe pulling people in and being like, oh, here's a platform. It's like even with what I'm doing with EU right now, with my team, we all have our own experiences. When I talk to Amit, when I talk to Amel, Katya, when I talk to Nadine, and they talk about their experiences from an Asian background, Caribbean background, African background, growing up in Europe, there's so many aligning and similar experiences, but they're so different at the same time. And it's like, I know that there's going to be kids out there who can relate to each of us on this team, and there's something unique that each of us bring to this team. So it's no longer a thing of, it's no longer a con, it's a pro for me now. It's like, I get to be all these things. Yay! I get to be a black person.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was
Yes.
to church and she'd be like, go to the front, let Pastor pray for you. And I remember standing there being like, no, I know I was born deaf for a reason. I don't need to change. And it used to annoy her so much. Last month, she called me crying and she's like, I get it now. I understand what your purpose has been. I understand what you've been trying to do. I get it now. And I'm so sorry. I love you so much. I get it. And at that point for me, it was like, I knew you were going to get it, but thanks for calling me and telling me and crying about it, because now we can cry together. And it took me owning myself for everybody else to own me, and that's what we're trying to do at UEDY. We're trying to own ourselves and, you know, encourage other Black, Asian, ethnic minority, deaf youth around Europe to own themselves and tell those truths. If people want you to write about them better, they should have behaved better. We are dismantling systems, you know, and we're doing it one day at a time. It's not going to be easy. As much as I've been smiling through this whole thing, I know something's going to happen next week, next month, next year that's going to shake me. But I'm so happy to have the support system that I have now that I didn't have 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And it took me making that first move, you know. We spend a lot of time being like, but not me, but why, but this, but that. And those buts are 100% valid. They're there for a reason. Our struggles are valid, our struggles are real. But the first person that needs to love and accept you for you to make changes is you, not anybody else. So until you get to a point where you can sit with yourself and be like, 5 years from now, this is where I want to be. This is who I am, who I'm trying to be. I understand that my trauma and my experiences have happened. They don't shape me, but I'm going to use them as tools to shape my future. That's when everything changes. That's when the conversation of intersectionality gets so much more real and gets so much more effective, and we can actually do something about it. Because oftentimes, when it's hard for you to look in the mirror, you're going to be looking everywhere else at where the problem is all around you. But when you can actually look in the mirror, that's all like blurry and you're not paying attention to that because you know, like laser focus, we need to do this to make sure that all these things are changed and transformed. And this is how it's going to benefit my community. This is how it's going to have a domino effect on several other communities. So I love that. I love what we're doing. I love the changes that are happening, even though it kind of sucks that we have to lose lives for them to happen. But yeah, I'm really grateful for the people that came before me and the people that are coming after me. The kids that hit me up on social media, like, you're so inspiring. And the empath in me is like, stop, no, I'm not. But then
No, you should, take it all, because those are all good energy, They are there to support you and bring you up. When you have a bad day that something doesn't happen, then you read those back and you still feel that love, and okay, this is what this is what I'm fighting for. And yeah, it's really, really, really important. Lydia, we are coming to an end to our conversation, but I want you to know you've got me, I got you in your team. So whatever, whenever, whatever you need, just give us an email or an SMS or whichever. And I will be.
I'll be calling you. The feeling is 100% mutual.
Yeah.
To be here.
Yes. So just before, I wanted to ask you flash info. Like usually we do a flash info with our, and then they tell us in like one phrase or even less what they think about this word. Okay, so we have a bit of facts. Lydia, you are smashing it. Yes, you are inspiration. You are the brain and the heart behind EUDI. Because of you finding us and becoming a team that will shape the future generation of Black and Asian deafies. Woo! Amazing. So I think for the sake of the show, thank you, Ava, who says, well done, Celine, and thank you, Lydia, for sharing your story. You are an inspiration. So I think we'll end here, and then we'll do part 2 when you come back at another time. Thank you, Romy, so much. You've done such a great job. I'm amazed. And thank you so much, Lydia.
Thank you for having me.
I cannot wait to work with you. Rome, yes. So I'm just gonna have one more information because that's important before ending the show today. The European Commission is calling for expression of interest from civil society organization to participate in consultation and the fight against racism for the implementation of the EU Action Plan against Racism. Diaspora Vote is organizing an application support session on this Saturday, 3rd of July, from 10 to 11:30. So if you're interested, please send an email to diasporavoteupdate@gmail.com. diasporavoteupdate@gmail.com, and so you can participate in that session. But if you can't, don't worry, Diaspora Vote will publish a template so that can help you. Thank you, Zakaria, for your message. I can't no longer read. I love you guys. I have missed you so much, and I cannot wait.
I'm so grateful.
Thank you, and please come back. And I cannot wait to see you guys in July. So thank you everyone for being here. The show is ending today, and I will see you guys in July. Bye bye. Bisous, bisous. Mwah. À bientôt.